rooftop in Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. You can see the skyline of the city behind me. I've been thinking a lot about this place. We're here filming for the Bartolomé de las Casas episode. But, you know, Santo Domingo was the doorway to the New World. So when the Spanish first came over here, Columbus himself came to this island on his first journey in 1492. But they established their capital here in Santo Domingo. So think of all of the Catholicism, all of the New World came through this portal, as it were. Well, also to the city came the very young Bartolomé de las Casas, who came over as a guy trying to, make his way and establish his career as probably a planter or a trader or something. Around 1510, a group of Dominican friars also came to this place. And the Dominican friars, along with Las Casas, noticed the brutal treatment of the Indians in this part of the world. And there's a very important sermon that was given on the fourth Sunday of Advent, 1511, by a Father Montesinos, who was one of the Dominican friars. And before the entire political establishment of Santo Domingo, including Columbus's son, Diego, who was the governor of the Indies at the time, he gave this scathing sermon critiquing the Spanish leadership and the way they were treating the Indians. I'm not sure if he was in the audience that day, but certainly would have heard of this sermon, was the young Las Casas. So Las Casas eventually becomes himself a Dominican friar, and then becomes really above all of them, the great defender of the Indians. Now, Montesinos as a Dominican, Las Casas as a Dominican, had in common St. Thomas Aquinas, the greatest of the Dominican teachers. What did they learn from him? Well, one thing was the nature of law. So Aquinas, in his famous treatise on law, says that there are three types of law that exist in a kind of nesting relationship. First, positive law. Those would be the statutes by which a city or a nation is governed. So things from tax laws to traffic laws. Those are the positive laws. But Aquinas said, positive law, if it's just, if it's legitimate, is grounded in the natural law. The natural law would be that whole range of precepts and instincts around the moral life. So, for example, traffic regulation, you say, well, how's that related to morality? Well, it is. It's designed to protect human life. Tax law, designed to redistribute some of the wealth to benefit those that might not have it otherwise, etc. So positive law, at its best, is grounded in the moral law. Then finally, Aquinas says the natural law, the moral law, is grounded in, it nests within the eternal law, which is identical to the mind of God. Now, that's an extremely important connection. Now we see that a just positive law ultimately reflects the will and purpose of God. See, and that's why Las Casas argued that as the Indians were being so badly mistreated, it was not just an example of, this is not working out pragmatically. It was an offense to the moral law and eventually an offense to God's law. That's what Montesinos argued in his famous sermon. Now, let me make one more connection here. So I'm talking now about 16th century Santo Domingo and these Dominican advocates of the Indians. But now, fast forward to the mid-20th century. There's a young Baptist preacher named Martin Luther King who begins to lead the civil rights movement. As part of this process, he's arrested in the city of Birmingham and is sent to jail. While he's there, he decides to write a letter. So we know it now as the famous letter from the Birmingham City Jail. It was a response to those who were saying to him, you're moving too fast. You're asking too much of people. Just hold off. King argued, no, we have to act now against Jim Crow laws. Now, why? Why? Just because they're a societal anomaly? No, because they are finally an affront to God. What did he use as his argument? He used precisely what Bartolomé de las Casas used. He appealed to St. Thomas Aquinas. Go read King's letter from the Birmingham City Jail and watch for that reference to Thomas Aquinas. And I find that very powerful. These two great figures, Las Casas defending the Indians, King defending his own African American people, centuries apart, but both relying upon this great Catholic teacher. And I think everybody, that is key to our sense of law today. Law is not just a artificial convention of society. law at its best is reflective of moral principles and ultimately of God's will. When we understand that, we'll make better laws, and we'll also, I hope, raise our voices in the same kind of eloquent protest as Las Casas and King when those laws are out of step with the divine purpose.